Okay, good. Welcome everyone to the Leadership Lounge. This is the first of our Leadership Lounge sessions. Really glad you could join us today. And with me today, I have three of my good friends who come to join us in the Leadership Lounge. I want to welcome today, we've got Jane Booth, who's the coaching and mentoring lead at the Guildhall in London. Welcome, Jane.
Thanks.
And we've got Steve, who is CEO of Emerging Leaders. Great to have you with us, Steve.
Thanks, Colin.
And we've got Daniel Brooks, who works with Leadership Lab International. Great you can join us, Daniel.
Yeah, cheers, Colin.
Yeah, great. So as you can see, we're following the kind of lockdown procedure. If you're watching this, you can see we're all on our kind of Zoom pictures together. And if you're listening to this on audio, then that makes no difference to you at all. You're just hearing us as normal. But let me kind of introduce you a little bit more to the members who joined me in the Leadership Lounge today. So Jane, if we start with you, you're coaching and mentoring lead at the Guildhall in London. What does that entail?
Well, the Guildhall School is a higher education music and drama conservatoire. So we are a place of great creativity, performance, thinking about our expression and our bodies. And I've been working there for quite a few years, heading a department that looks at performance through historical eyes. So I led the historical performance department in music for nearly a decade. But in recent years, we have developed a coaching and mentoring faculty internally and externally. And I now lead that faculty, which is a huge privilege and a really exciting role to have. We train people in coaching and mentoring techniques. We are fully accredited by the European Mentoring and Coaching Council, and we offer bespoke services in a whole range of professional development areas that anyone might be interested in. I still play the clarinet. I'm at heart a clarinetist who loves to communicate, and the coaching and mentoring allows me another avenue for my desire to communicate and exchange with others.
Brilliant, lovely, thank you. And I can personally say that Jane's leadership of that has been brilliant. I have been had the privilege of being trained as part of that and worked with you guys. And if anyone is thinking of doing kind of coaching training, highly recommending you contacting the Guildhall for that brilliant work, and really helps you in that approach. So thank you, Jane, for joining us today. It's brilliant that you're with us just to bring your perspective. Steve, welcome to you. So CEO of Emerging Leaders, kind of what does that entail and what's Emerging Leaders all about?
So Emerging Leaders works with vulnerable communities around the world, helping to unlock the human potential that's there and help them to lead themselves out of poverty and to flourish. So we're working in around 8 countries at the moment. We've worked and kind of had a footprint in around 16. With a focus on how do we particularly liberate the capacity in young people in and across developing countries, really, with a focus around Africa and Asia at the moment, but with a plan to step into Central and Southern America this year and next.
And you guys do an amazing work. Like all of my guests here, I've got a connection with you. I know you. I've worked with you and the Emerging Leaders team. Fantastic work you do. And so you're CEO. What does that involve for you? What are the core parts of your leadership role there?
Well, I'm still learning because I'm only 2 months into the role, so I'm still working that out. But essentially, it's leading the organisation forward. So keeping a clear handle on the mission. Of what we're trying to do, and make sure that I kind of steer the ship in that direction, and then liberating the capacity of the team that we have. So working alongside the in-country teams, working alongside the core-based team here in the UK, and trying to think beyond the present. So my role particularly is around focusing less on the present and more about the future. So where do we need to be in 12 months' time, 18 months' time, 3 years' time? And how do we begin to plot the journey towards that right now?
Brilliant. So, I mean, a huge range there of leadership skills and leadership context, well, working with people close to hand and distance. So real challenges around leadership there. Thanks, Steve. And Daniel, thank you for joining us today. So you work for Leadership Lab International. So there's a word international there, which suggests that you're not in the UK at the moment. I know where you are because I can see it on your title on screen. But tell us a little bit about where you are and kind of what Leadership Lab International is and kind of your involvement.
Yeah, sure. So I live in Zagreb, Croatia, and Leadership Lab International is basically a project program organization that seeks to equip and empower young leaders. So I think the age is from around kind of 18 through to 28, 30, something like that. And so, yeah, international's the key word, like you said, having leaders from many different nations who have come and been on this project, which takes place over the summer. And so parts of that is training and coaching, sports ministry, like a variety of different areas. And so, yeah, I also took part in that program as well.
Yeah, great. So you've experienced that both as a participant and now you're getting involved in the organisation and taking what you've experienced to actually help them in that next stage of leadership. So that's fantastic. And as you say, that's kind of working for young leaders. And you're going to help us in the podcast today, bringing that kind of perspective as a young leader. There are three of us here who I've classed as more venerable, and you're bringing that youthful part to it as well. So fantastic! Thank you for joining us. So our topic today is our first topic in the Leadership Lounge, and it's looking at the topic of inspiring yourself as a leader. For me, I think this is a really key issue, and particularly at the moment. As leaders in the midst of coronavirus and leading groups of people, there are immense challenges. We need to develop new skills when we are leading in uncertain times, and that ability to recharge and refresh yourself is absolutely crucial. For me, just to kick us off, I remember the importance of this. There was a particular moment. There's a guy that I know Steve knows very well, Trevor Waldock, and I think Steve was present at the time when this story that I'm going to recount to you happened. I remember a group of us meeting with him, and he turned to us, and probably he looked at me. At the time I was a head teacher, and I know I had baggy eyes at the time. I looked knackered probably, and he probably looked at me, and this might have been the reason that he actually said it. He said, look, what is really important if you are going to inspire others, he said the word inspire means to breathe into others. And there's an element when you're inspiring others, you're giving a message that's kind of resonating almost with their inner being, with almost their kind of soul. And he said, inspire is to breathe in. And he said, if you are not breathing in yourself as a leader, he said, what happens is you're just breathing in stale air yourself and breathing that stale air into others. And he said, so it's crucial that in order to inspire others, you need to inspire to breathe in yourself. And so that really struck me at the time. And I think for me, running my organisation of Everyday Leader, which is to inspire and to equip others, that keyword inspire. If I'm going to inspire others, I need to breathe in. And so I thought, what better ways to bring you guys together just to look at that topic of how do we inspire ourselves in order to inspire others? How do we recharge ourselves in order to do that? So, Steve, I wonder if I was to start with you. What do you do to inspire yourself or recharge yourself as a leader?
So I do a blend of things. I would say for me, it's not a one thing. So I would have a number of things that I would do at different times to inspire me in different ways. I think that would feed and fill different parts of, if you like, my soul. Kind of the essence of who I am. So that could be anything from so meeting with people, which coronavirus has clearly influenced. Like it would be sitting, meeting, and talking face to face with people who will inspire me. So it's people who have greater experience than me, better understanding, have been in different situations, can challenge my thinking, can improve my creativity. So I'm doing that now on Zoom, preferred with a coffee live, but now I'm just finding other ways to do that. Yeah. And I do that face-to-face still with one or two guys who are in similar positions to me who live locally. So we meet once every so often, go for a socially distanced walk.
Yeah.
and are able to just continue the process of talking, working out the process of what's going on, and being inspired in the process of learning together. So that's really important for me. Exercise is a really important thing for me. I do a lot of my best thinking when I'm out running, mainly because I'm trying to not focus on the pain that I'm feeling. But that's one of the key things for me is that's critical to be out and about and outside. And when I'm not, I know that has an impact on my general well-being, but it also has an impact on my ability to inspire others. And then I watch TED Talks. I watch and I listen to other really good people. So, a big part of what I do is around communication. So I watch and try and learn from other brilliant communicators.
Yeah.
I love stories. And then a crucial thing for me in the work that we do particularly is and again, challenging at the moment because of the situations, but is making sure that I'm in the field face to face with the people that we work with and journey alongside on a reasonably regular basis. So not just training people that deliver training to them, but actually meeting with them and making sure that I'm elbow deep in the realities of what's going on the ground, because those stories and those lives remind me that's why we do what we do. And I think that for me, that's a really crucial piece. Not being, particularly even more so now, I've now taken on this new role as I'm still going to have to find ways to be able to do that, because I one of the things that inspires me is being able to be connected in that physical way.
Yeah, brilliant. So there's a real sense for you then of that taking ownership of it in both what you're inputting, but you're talking really about also making sure that you inspire yourself through the work, that you're seeing it firsthand, and you keep reminding yourself of seeing that vision firsthand as well.
Yeah, and it's that for me. It's just that constant, consistent, regular input. Reading as another thing. That's one of the things that I don't find so easy or so natural. But I'm finding ways to do that more creatively and easily. So I've downloaded a new app that's called Blinkist. So I use Blinkist, and that's a way that you can get a lot of input through books that I can list. 15 minutes, they summarize a book in around 15 minutes of the main points.
Yeah.
On a 45-minute 9K 10,000 step walk that I'm trying to do every day, I can read 3 books. And I might listen to the same book 3 times if the stuff that I'm listening to is inspiring me. And then I kind of go back to that and then try and retain the points, and I will then even kind of make notes when I get back of the stuff that I'm listening. So I'm trying to find ways to input in ways that work for me.
Yeah, and that's the key thing, isn't it? Finding ways that work for you.
Yeah.
Is really crucial. Yeah. Daniel, what about you? How do you make sure that you inspire and recharge yourself? What is it that you do?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm discovering this a little bit more and more. So early doors in finding what is the best ways that I inspire, what is the best ways that, in terms of leadership, how I lead. And so very, very early on in this, which is why it's great to be here and just to listen to you guys in this as well. But I think for me, resonated a lot with what Steve was saying, being with people, either with similar mindsets on a topic or whatever it might be, or completely opposite or different mindsets and beliefs and thoughts. And that is definitely helpful for me in seeing different perspectives and seeing different aspects of a situation, a topic. So those are definitely some of them. Running as well for me. So we've got just near here, there's a river. And so going running by there, despite all the mosquitoes that are everywhere and clouds them, you just run into them, but and dodging everyone else is there. But running for me is where I just clear my head, and exercise generally, clear my head and think about life, think about what's going on, a processing time. And again, with that, I think my character, I'm definitely one who will externally process, and it's more helpful for me to do that rather than, think by myself about this, but speak with others. So relationships are incredibly important for me.
So I love some of the stuff you're pulling out there. So you're talking, for me, that sounds like you're an extrovert thinker. You like to rebound that off others. And so it's thinking about your style and approach, and if you're an extrovert, use people to do that with. I loved as well the fact that you talked about not just circulating in your like-minded groups of thinking. So I mean, that's important, isn't it, that you meet with like-minded people that are encouraging you, but you also talked about kind of listening and thinking and reading and discussing with people that are outside of your own little echo chamber. Again, that either it helps you kind of ratify your thinking, but it might also help you open your thinking, which I think is fantastic. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Jane, kind of for you, how important is it for a leader to give time to kind of inspiration and to inspire?
Well, it strikes me, and from what Steve and Daniel have already said, that they recognise absolutely the importance of having new external input to their thinking and their operations. And we are just human, and we are individuals. None of us is a representative of everything that's available. We are unique. We are each important, and we bring our strengths and our specialization to whatever we do. And those things are incredibly important. But no person can have every scenario with it under their belt. And look at where we are right now. We're facing things that, a completely new situation, totally unique within our lifetime. And so leaders are having to think afresh. They're having to think on their feet, having to move really fast to find solutions and to support their teams and all the rest of it. So, none of us have experienced this before. We don't have something in our toolkit that says this is how you deal with this situation. Bringing everything of ourselves and our best will to the situation and connecting with others and asking, how do other people approach this? What's their experience? How have they found their way forward? I mean, you're talking about what inspires us, and I was really touched by both Steve and Daniel talking about physicality, using physical action to start that stimulation process. And I think I have a similar kind of response to the question as well, because we're, especially now, sat at the computer a lot of the time. My immediate response is, how am I going to get some fresh thinking? I need to move my body. I need to get outside. I need to look at something different. I need to experience something different. Something that's been happening to me recently is I've been really inspired by birds, by watching them, by listening to them. Our work as coaches has a lot to do with conversation, and we think and we train a lot about how to create artful conversation. And I've been listening to blackbirds having a conversation night after night, and it's beautiful conversation. And I've been noticing how they finish their sentences before the other one responds, and how polite they are and how they listen attentively. And it struck me, they don't go crashing into each other in the air, do they? They're paying acute attention to each other. That's been something that's inspired me recently. But I'm also inspired when I play music. I mean, as I said, I'm still a clarinet player. When I sit down to practice, it can be a bit annoying actually, but when I sit down to practice, all sorts of ideas and thoughts come into my head when I'm not even trying. I mean, I'm trying to do one thing, but the act of doing that seems to create more thinking elsewhere. So in some respects, I don't know where the inspiration will come from, but being open to it and aware of it and looking for connections. How does this thing that's interesting me relate to my world and what I do? Is there a parallel in terms of what nature's offering or what music is offering or what story is offering? Is there something that can inflect? And, Colin, you'll know in the work that we do, we really emphasize reflective practice. And reflective practice is about setting aside time somehow to go over that story, to go over that event and ask, how did I handle that? Was that the best thing? What else could I have done in that situation? What might have, had I tried this approach, might that have brought a different outcome? And, we've learned through learning, the more we look at reflective practice, we've learned that can be an incredibly fruitful place of learning from yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
But being in connection with the world and others around you, according to what fits your personality.
So I love what you mentioned there. So it's about utilising your areas of interest or things that give you a diversion as well, which actually is a different part of your brain. So you've talked for you, that's about music. The other guys have also talked about that sense of running. Sometimes for some people, running is like, oh no, that would be the worst thing for me. So what is it that's their interest that will take that diversity? And you've also talked about just taking moments in nature. So like Daniel, you talked about running along the river. Jane, you talked about just sitting, listening to the birds, and they are really out at the moment, aren't they? They go, well, these aeroplanes aren't interfering with our noise, so we can carry on talking. And that reflective practice, Jane, you just talked about. So as you talked about, I've literally just, if you're watching online, I've just grabbed this little black book, and it's my journal, where just spending some time just reflecting, what am I reading at the moment? What's it teaching me? What am I hearing? What's it teaching me? As you said, I did that activity. How did it go? What was working well? What could I do even better? That's really crucial. So, Steve, this thing about inspiring yourself is really key. What do you see as the impact when you don't do that? I mean, have you ever been in moments where you perhaps haven't taken that time to recharge and inspire? What was the impact of that, or generally, what do you see as the impact of not recharging and not inspiring yourself?
No, I've never had that, Colin. I've always lived perfectly. Of course I have. Look, I think one of the things that struck me over my kind of leadership journey in a number of different spheres, for example, has been that that this is really important. And particularly, I think when you often can start out in new situations or new contexts, you are a bit more disciplined. But I think the challenge is remembering how important it is and then prioritizing it, and actually making it a building in the discipline of that and the intentionality that into your everyday life and what you do.
Yeah.
And the emails or the Zoom calls or the reports or whatever it is that you got to write are no more important than the investment in yourself. If anything, the investment in yourself is more important, so that you can function more effectively in all of the other areas. And we think that we don't have time to invest in ourselves, but actually, when we invest in ourselves, everything else flows easier and better anyway. So I think some of the impacts on that for me have been I noticed that my energy levels drop, so I feel more lethargic, both in terms of my physicality and in terms of my mentality. I think that my clarity gets foggy. I find it harder to make decisions quickly and simply. That at times when I've been inspired, I'm able to do that, and I think my creativity is dramatically reduced. So Daniel picked up on a point around connecting with and engaging with people outside of the way that you think. And I think we all have a tendency towards, I think, what's known as confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Is that, we get around us a group of people that are going to tell us what we want to hear, because that's kind of what nurtures or massages our ego. But actually, confirmation bias, I think, makes us blind to possibility. And we don't have to, it's why I'm loving this app that I'm, using for kind of listening to these books, is I'm listening to books that I would never buy or that I would never read necessarily, but because I've kind of paid for the app and I can listen to a bunch of stuff or read a bunch of stuff audibly while I'm walking, is that actually I'm listening to stuff outside of my normal sphere that is both challenging me and inspiring me, that then is creating a greater sense of energy. It's sharpening my thinking. It's giving me new ideas. It's helping me to grow as a human being. When I'm not doing those things, then that creativity is reduced, my energy is reduced, my lack of clarity is reduced in not just in my leadership in the job that I do, but just in me leading my own life, making decisions, even around what we're going to cook today. It's like, this is like a major dilemma because everything's foggy for you. I think it affects every sphere of your life.
So, Steve, that is great. That kind of explanation there, that unless we invest in ourselves, it will impact on us. And I think what you're talking about there is that archetypal kind of metaphor that when you go on an aeroplane and the stewardess or the steward stand beforehand and give you when the oxygen mask comes down, it reminds you, put the oxygen mask on yourself first so that you can help others. And unless we invest in ourselves, we then can't kind of help others. Jane, when you're coaching people, kind of what are the warning signs for leaders not investing in themselves? Because sometimes as leaders, we're in the midst of stuff, we perhaps don't spot the warning signs ourselves. But do you spot that as a coach when people haven't invested in themselves? What are the warning signs?
It's a good question, Colin. I guess the first thing I'd say is if they're coming to coaching, then they're already on a positive road, perhaps, or we hope they are, because they've recognised that they'd like to enhance their lives somehow. And quite often, the topics that people bring are around how do I balance my life and work? How do I get the whole team working so that we're in harmony, but none of us are overstretched and all the rest of it. I mean, I think different personality types find stress in different situations.
Yeah.
The role of a leader is often a really lonely role. I mean, if you're leading an organization, you don't have the same kinds of water cooler moments and conversations, do you? Because you have a certain status, you have a responsibility, people are looking to you to hold the big issues. And so you can't let off steam whenever you want to. And you need to have that strategic head that you need to be someone people can talk to, but you're not the person that can offload to everybody else. So being a leader can be a very lonely place. And obviously that's one of the benefits of coming to coaching is that you can work with somebody who's a thinking partner, who's not going to tell you what to do, but you can start to voice the things that are going on. And, as Steve has said, making decisions can become tricky. Even the simplest decisions of the day can start to become tricky when people are feeling overcrowded, overwhelmed with what's going on. And I think that sense of overwhelm is really the main thing that comes across.
Yeah.
And when we're overwhelmed, it's hard to deal with any of the things that we have to face, whether it's issues at home or issues at work, or knowing when to leave one place and go to the other.
Yeah.
So overwhelm, I think, is the biggest topic that people might start with when they come to this process.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other bit I would add to that as well, in terms of the people you're surrounding yourself with can make a real difference. So my wife is fantastic. I love her to bits. And one of the best bits she does is, darling, you look knackered. and that's a really good reminder. That's another sign, isn't it? You've got that sense of being overwhelmed. For some people, their threshold is quite high, and it will perhaps show in other ways, and that can be in the way they look. They look tired. If you're surrounding yourself with people where you've given them permission to speak into your life, they may say things are looking tired, or are you okay? Because you just responded to that differently to the way you would do normally. You were a bit shorter, a bit sharper, whatever. That can make a real difference. Daniel, I was struck recently by your story, so that how you deal with pressure and how you inspire yourself. And so, I was struck you've recently moved to Croatia, and as you moved to Croatia, lockdown happened. I don't think the two are synonymous. I don't think you caused lockdown across the world. But as you moved to Croatia, lockdown happened. You then had an earthquake. You then caught and had COVID-19. You must probably have thought, what on earth have I done? Why is this happening to me? What did you do at that point to kind of inspire yourself in the midst of both external and internal things that were coming at you as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jane picked up on it a little bit, that aspect of overload. So yeah, arriving here, beginning the process of learning a new culture, new language, then the classes we have in person go online, and lockdown hits, and then shortly after that we have the biggest earthquake in 100 years, and aftershocks for days afterwards, and we're trying to social distance on the streets just here, whilst an earthquake just happened and the electric's gone and all that stuff. I think it was easy for me as well in the time when I was actually sick just to go into this period of despair, or just being locked in, these four walls. Quite literally, I was for 4 weeks, and that was a big challenge. And staying inspired in that, and staying, hopeful in many ways, and that was a challenge. One of the aspects that was very helpful for me was just trying to pick up something new and try and do something new with the environment I'm in. So for me, I literally learned guitar in that period. Just picked up a skill, picked up something that I could do that's, it's fun. I could use it for something else as well. But this is a variety, even though the space itself isn't able to have that variety. But what can I do with where I'm at? And what can I, make the most of within this environment? So that's definitely a key thing for me. Second aspect would be people. And so I was, even whilst ill, calling people and just trying to just see outside of where I'm at. And one of the big things that I was taught kind of growing up, and one of my mentors said to me was, you reach the ceiling of opportunity, or ceiling of kind of where you're at, and it can feel like you can't step outside of that, you can't get outside of that, but realizing, no, there is a way. And so discovering those ways is, I think, part of the journey as well, to staying inspired and being inspired.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly, when I've come across challenge as a leader, and I had this a couple of years ago, particularly, the thing for me, I found some F's that were really helpful, and it wasn't a kind of swearing version or anything. It was family and friends, and for me there was an element of faith. So my belief system was important, and you've just added another one in a sense of fun, kind of learning guitar, learning something new within that. And that's an important way to kind of recharge and inspire yourself as well. And so if you're in those elements, finding, people, we've talked about that, and a number of us talked about the importance of people being that recharge, but it's also just looking at your belief system and kind of using that to recharge, or whatever that might be. And you've added fun, learning guitar. I think that's fantastic. And I've just got this image of you now, Daniel, in the midst of coronavirus and earthquakes. There are you playing your guitar. Fantastic. I can see for those of you who are watching this, Jane's now nodding as a musician. She's, kind of cheering you on in that. And so this kind of, recharging yourself, how can a leader discover ways that work for them? And any of you kind of got any top tips on how you can discover the way that works for you? Because each of you have found your own ways of recharging. But how do you go about discovering that? Any ideas?
I think I've got another F for you there, Colin. It's finding flow for me. I think finding, noticing, and even if you think back to your earliest years, what are the things that I've loved doing? What childhood memories do I have? When did I undertake an activity and I was lost in it? And time passed by and I had no idea that the hours had gone and I'd been involved in that activity for a long time. When did I find flow? Or when did I last find flow? When was the last time that I didn't look at my watch for an hour and or didn't check my emails, or didn't, what was I doing? What are the things that I can be completely caught up in and nobody, I'm not aware of what's around me. What are those things? So finding flow.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, and I've just been reading a brilliant book. I'm probably going to pronounce it incorrectly. I think it's Wabi-sabi, which is a kind of Japanese. Anyone listening who knows the Japanese is probably going to criticize me for my pronunciation, but that sense of just recognizing in our imperfect world, actually there's a perfection in that, and just noticing where stuff is. And as you say, the flow of where have I got lost in the moment and stuff is a brilliant way of doing that. Yeah, thanks, Jane. Are there any top tips that you guys have got? How can you go about discovering what's right for you? Is it, as James just said, finding the thing that you get lost in the moment of? Is that a key to helping you?
Yeah, I was going to say definitely finding the thing and finding the place or the passion. And so for me, that was the people group of Croatia. And so finding myself here, it's that aspect of not only is it home, but also it's a place, like you said, where the hours just, they go away, and they're just, you're not watching your clock, you're not thinking, oh, I wish I was doing something else right now. Finding the specific, for me, fall into my life, right? And so, and what that looks like. So I think that's definitely a key thing for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. So in a recent, go on, Steve. Yeah.
I think for me, it's been trial and error. And part of that, initially, I used to feel guilty because I didn't feel inspired by some of the ways that other people shared that they felt inspired, and I felt, well, I'm obviously not as good a leader as they are, and that might be true in terms of capacity or whatever. But it's in terms of I just had to find my own ways and accept that those are right. So it's like if I picked up a book, I felt I had to read it all the way through, and it's like, I found this book so hard.
Yeah,
it wasn't inspiring. And then a friend of mine said, "Well, then don't read it. Put it down." It's like, oh yeah. So once I gave myself permission to do that, then I was able. I then found ways to find different material. So I think trial and error for me has been the important thing, and finding what connects with me. Forget about what works for everybody else. I am Steve Miles. I've got to be who I am. I've got to stand up and be myself, and I've got to find out what works for me.
Brilliant.
So give myself permission to not do some of the things that other people say are really important, that really help them, and find the things that for me that do. And I think the two other things that have been really important for me, particularly highlighted, I think, in the current situation, is rhythm. Finding a rhythm has been really important. So, lockdown threw everyone's rhythm out, and I think a lot of people struggle then to find a new pattern of rhythm where they could inspire themselves. So I had to find a new rhythm, and in that give myself permission to prioritize that time. And then I think the other thing is just environment for me. Anyway, that's important. So I've worked out that trying to do the inspire piece at my desk is not the right place for me to do the inspired piece. It's either another room in the house, or we built a decking out the back and we've got a hammock. If I go and read and I want to read or watch stuff, I go and sit and swing in my hammock for a bit. And I've taught myself that that's okay because that's important, and not guilty for doing that.
Brilliant, finding that space. So I now have this image that there is Daniel in the midst of earthquakes playing his guitar. There is Steve in his hammock reading, and there is Jane playing her clarinet. So, but it's that key thing about finding what works for you. In a recent kind of blog series, I've started to talk around CRISP. Kind of 5 things that will help you kind of inspire and recharge yourself. So the first is clarity of purpose. Actually, Steve, you talked a little bit about that one when you talked about going and seeing the stuff that you're actually involved in and just reminding yourself, what is my purpose? How is it outworking? And just reminding yourself of that, keep revisiting it. Rest and reflection moments. We've talked about reflection, we've talked about using journals, but also that sense of just resting sometimes, just stopping and just recharging. And that can come for different people in different range of forms, can't it? For some, it is literally stopping and resting on the hammock. For others, it's doing a bit of gardening because it's just doing something different. Then you've got the I of your input. What are you reading, listening, watching? We've talked a little bit about that. That if it's a book, like you said, Steve, you can put it down. I know probably half the librarians in this world now are probably, put a book down. But if it's not working for you, it is okay to put it down. But also, if you're not into reading, the podcast, the TED Talks, whatever that might be, then surrounding yourself. We've talked about that earlier, about the positive, like-minded people, but also there's that element in surrounding yourself in different thinking as well. So you break down some of your own echo chambers so you can open your thinking to new things. And then the last one, the P, is practice what energizes you. And so, in that I talk about the fact that if we're spending all our time working in ways and doing things that don't energize us, it's not going to equip us. So for me, I know running training and doing coaching, working with people is what energizes me. If I'm doing some online prep, it's okay for a certain amount of time, but if I'm doing too much of that, I find it de-energizing. So then I have to make sure that I invest in some time in doing that. So there are those 5 things, and we've kind of, a number of us have covered different ones, but which of these do you find most helpful? Or is it the blend that's important? Is it just one of those for you? Is it a couple of them? Jane, what is it? what one or two things are the key things for you out of those? Or is it all complete nonsense? Colin, you're 5 and rubbish.
I really like the analogy. I love crisps too, but I think all of those are important, and I think that getting the right balance for you is just so essential for you to be able to show up and be at your best in the moments when it matters most. I think getting the balance right is a matter of trial and error, as Steve says. Everybody's different. No one can give you the template for being you. So I think all of those are important. But, clarity of purpose for me, that maybe talks about goal setting, which is really critical. If we don't know something about where we want to be, then how are we going to create the journey? And for me too, rest and reflection. I have a preference for introversion, so I do need time on my own. And if I don't get enough of that, then you might not like me so much.
I can't imagine that at all. For those of you who know Jane, maybe you're going to say to me, Jane, Colin, you don't know me well enough. But Jane has just got this lovely nature with people. But Jane, what you're saying is, for you, that importance of rest and reflection actually enables you to be the best person that you can be, and without that, it's critical. So actually, the Jane that we see is because you've invested in that in yourself. Brilliant. Daniel, what about you? Are there any there that particularly resonate for you out of those?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that maybe this is just my personality speaking as well, but a blend of, crisp, a blend of, all the aspects we've kind of talked about is helpful for me. And I guess with that, it is that, like, for me, when I discovered that I was extroverted, and just kind of love being with people, that sparks my thinking, that sparks my creativity, that gets me excited and passionate. That was a big turning point, because I realized, I need this. I need to be with people to then actually be creative and be best on a team, be best with people. And so and that active nature for me, and that variety of things in the day, in spatially, in activities, is incredibly helpful. But it is, in my opinion, you've got to understand, how do you best function? Is it that you're introverted, extroverted? Is it that you really love working on teams, or you're more solitary in your work? Or and so some of the personality tests that are out there and are helpful, and I think they all provide a better picture of who am I, how do I work, and so that's
brilliant. That's a really good perspective, Danny. What sits at the root of that is get to know yourself. Actually, what kind of person am I? And so there are online things. I think they're free ones like viacharacter.org, are quite good ones. Find out what kind of person you are, and then build around that. And then you're again talking about being purposeful in it. Not just let it happen by accident. A number of us have talked about that in this session, haven't we? Be purposeful in planning that time. So our kind of time's running short, and I just want to cover one thing with Jane around how coaching can be important, and then really for each of us to come up with a top tip that we want to leave with our listeners today. Just what you would give as the golden nugget around making sure inspiring yourself as a leader. So Jane, coaching, both you and I are coaches. We see the value in it, but for somebody who hasn't been coached before, how does that help?
Well, for a leader, it can be an opportunity to have a thinking partner, to have a conversation with somebody that's it's a confidential conversation. It's not going anywhere. You can get off your chest everything that's going on, and you can start to look at that and start to drill down. What's this really about? I mean, often we find that the discomfort or the dissonance sits with one of our values, one or more of our personal values that's being challenged at that moment. So it helps us learn much more about ourselves. What are my drivers? What's really important to me, and what's not aligned currently with the situation I'm in, or with the organisation, or with my other team members. It's confidential. It can really help. But the other thing that we found is that training to be a coach can actually give you more of that skill set to be able to deploy and use with your team. So it helps you bring a coaching approach to your work, and helps you support every member of your team to be the best that they can be as well. So it's a very unselfish investment, because it really can help support everybody in the organisation, and that it sets a new culture, a new way of working, one in which people don't have to be perfect. They show up and they discuss and talk and share and work things out together. And as someone who loves teamwork, for me, that's something that resonates so strongly for me.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I would add to that, I think when you train to become a coach, it actually helps you to coach yourself. I think you learn some new problem-solving techniques when you're facing challenging. So actually, that is an investment in yourself as well as investing in others, exactly as you've said there.
Actually, and early on, Steve said something about liberating, and I think coaching can very often liberate people from things that they might have been carrying with them for a very long time. So it's a very liberating is a good word.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So we're going to draw our Leadership Lounge to a close. I want to thank you guys for kind of helping today. But what would be your top tip? What one thing would you say to our listeners is your golden nugget around kind of investing and inspiring and recharging yourself as a leader? Steve, perhaps if we start with you, what would your one nugget be?
So I want to go back to something that you said right at the beginning, Colin, where you talked about inspire, the kind of the stuff that you picked up from Trevor in the same session that we were in, that inspire us to breathe in. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that struck me in reflection on that is, what can I do today that will help me to step into any situation to be able to, if you like, breathe with fresh breath confidence. So, am I bringing something from the past, that's going to bring with it a sense of staleness, or actually what am I reading, watching, listening to, who am I speaking to that will actually enable me to step into a meeting, a situation, a conversation, to be able to speak, live, act, be with fresh breath confidence.
Brilliant, thank you. Daniel, what about you? What would your top tip be?
Yeah, I think probably when we look at the question, how do I inspire? How do I become inspired? I would say learn how you roll. Simple as that in some ways, but obviously that's a complex thing. And so, what you said, Steve, earlier really, I guess, sparks that thought of, just feel free to put the book down. Like, actually, if that doesn't work for you, then find what does. And so how do you roll would definitely be for me. And that's what I'm in the process of. We're all in the process of.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Daniel. And that's why we got you here, is to bring that youthful energy and learn how you roll. I'm going to be able to use that with my adult children, and they'll say, Dad, you can't use that. Daniel says it far better than you. But that's a brilliant phrase. Thank you. Jane, what about you? What would your top tip be?
Ask yourself who you want to be when you show up in the room.
Lovely. Love that as well. Yeah, brilliant. My top tip would be purposeful. Don't let this happen by accident. A number of us talked about this. Be purposeful. Don't let that drip off either in terms of let it slip, but just be purposeful in investing in yourself. So I guess, it picks up a number of things that you guys have talked about as well. Guys, can I thank you for your time? It's been brilliant to spend time with you today, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and sharing your wisdom on how we inspire ourselves as leaders. There will be another leadership podcast next month with a group of 3 more guests, but I just want to thank you, Steve Miles, for your help, Jane Booth and Daniel Brooks for sharing your inspiration with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin.
Colin.